All right, in this video, we are going to talk about rational equations. So a rational equation is an equation that contains a rational expression, which is basically, you can just think of it as a fraction, okay? The fractions are called rational numbers, right? In math also, so fraction, rational, um, kind of mean the same thing in terms of equations and numbers, okay? All right, so here are some examples. You can see we have some fractions in here, and we have some fractions in here. All right, so that's what they look like. One of the big differences from the linear equations that we talked about is that they have variables in the bottom part of the fraction. So, but it doesn't really matter too much. For our class, you're going to have the same approach, whether these are just numbers or variables in there. So, okay. So the basic thing that you would want to do is when you have a rational equation that looks like this, um, what you would want to do is multiply through the entire equation by the least common denominator, the LCD. And if you do that correctly, then what will happen is that the fractions will be cleared out and you won't have to worry about the fractions anymore. All right, so let's take a look at this example here. All right, so I wrote it in the wrong spot, but that's okay. All right, so looking at this, I can see I have some fractions in my equation. And so what I want to do is multiply through by the LCD. So to get the LCD, what I'm going to do is to look at the denominators. It's going to be the smallest number that all of these go into evenly, okay? And so there's a number of different ways that you can do that. But the very first thing is we're going to have to identify the LCD. All right, one of the ways that you can do that pretty quickly, if you have, assuming that you have a calculator, is to start with the largest number here, 12. 9 and 6, and you would check to see if the other numbers go into to 12. 6 goes into 12, right? But 9 definitely does not, okay? And so then what you would want to do is to increase that, multiply that largest number by 2. So 12 times 2, let me bring it up Desmo so you can kind of see how this works, how you would do it on a calculator. So 12 times 2 would be 24, right? And we know 6 goes into 24, right? But does 9 go into 24 evenly? And it does not, okay? So you can see you get a decimal here. So next try 12 times 3, right? 12 times 3 is 36, right? And so 6 definitely goes into 36 evenly, right? And it goes into, and then check to see if the other denominator, 9, does it go into 36? And it does go in, okay? So for numbers, that's one way in which you can use or find the LCD. It might not be the quickest way all of the time, but it'll work. If you have a calculator, it shouldn't take too terribly long in most cases. Now, in some cases, it might. And there's a whole other way of calculating LCDs or of numbers that we won't go into. Okay, so again, just to recap, right? If you're rusty on finding the LCD, one way to do it is to start with the biggest number, right? And then check to see if the other numbers go into that. And if they don't, then times it by 2 and try that. If that doesn't work, times it by 3, try that, and then keep going until you find the smallest multiple of this number that these go into, all right? And you might not even have to do that. You might have known right off the bat that 36 was the LCD, and that's fine. That is just for if you're struggling a little bit about how to find the LCD of some numbers. Okay, So once you identify the LCD, then what you want to do is to multiply the entire equation by that number. So take the entire left side, multiply it by 36, and take the entire left side and multiply it by 36. Okay, so over here on the left hand side, I have multiple terms on this side. I have two terms, right? Two things separated by addition or subtraction. And so what I need to not forget is to multiply everything by the 36. So that's why I put it in parentheses. A lot of times you'll see people skip that step. Right, so you have to remember to multiply the 36 times both of these terms right here. So 36 times 2t over 9, and then minus 36 times 5, 6. Okay. All right, so a lot of times you'll see people just multiply every term by the LCD. That's equivalent for the most part, as long as you are a little bit careful about how you do that. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to show all the steps here on how to do that. All right, over here on the right hand side, I only have one term, so that's not a big deal. I just multiply it times this one term, and that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and start reducing over here. And remember, the thing is if you do this correctly, all of the fractions, right, should go away. So right here I have a 12 and a 36. I know that 12 goes into 36 evenly, right, because of the fact that it's the LCD, right? It's the least common denominator, so 12 goes in here evenly. So 12 goes into itself once, and it goes into 36 3 times, okay? So what I wind up with is 3t over 1. When I do that, because it's over 1, I'm not really going to write that. I'm just going to leave it as 3t. Okay. And the same thing is going to take place right over here on the left hand side. 9 goes into 36 4 times, right? So 9 goes into itself once, and it goes into 36 4 times, right? So I wind up over here with 4 times 2t. All right, and then I have this minus. Same thing over here. 6 goes into 36 evenly, right? 6 goes into itself one time. 6 goes into 36 6 times, right? So this is going to be 6 times 5 over 1. Since it's a 1, again, I'm not going to write it, okay? Okay, and so we wind up with this equation here. All right, and you'll notice there are no fractions in here. So that is the general idea. If I have an equation with fractions in it like this, I'm going to find the LCD. I'm going to multiply through by the LCD, because what's going to happen is that all of the fractions are going to be removed. And now we're just back to a regular old linear equation like we talked about previously. Okay. All right, and so what we would do is work through the steps of solving that linear equation. So first off, simplify both sides as much as possible. So here I can multiply the 4 times 2 to get 8t. And 6 times 5 is 30, so that's going to be 8t minus 30 on that side, equals 3t. Okay. So now we have each side as simple as we can possibly get it. What we want to go to next is adding or subtracting both sides, an expression from both sides. And remember, the goal is to get all of the terms with one variable, with a variable on one side, all the terms without the variable on the other side. So here, all the terms with the variable, without the variable, right, this minus 30, it's already on the left side, and it's the only one. So to me, the easiest thing to do is to subtract 8t from both sides. Now, you don't have to do it that way. as long as you stick with the rules of the addition principle and the multiplication principle, there are other ways to do it. So all right, so over on the left side I have at minus at, that's 0t, which I'm not going to write. I have minus 30, right? And then I have 3 minus at, that is negative 5t. Okay, and then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. And I come up with 6 equals t. Right? All right, and that is the answer for this one. All right, so that's an example of a rational equation. All right, and so I think that's it for this video. We are going to split out some of the examples in the next into some subsequent videos. Okay.